Tonight, the battle to get college campuses under control as pro-Palestinian demonstrations spread. Protesters and troopers in tactical gear clashing at UT Austin. At USC, officials urging students to avoid the center of campus as police face off with demonstrators. House Speaker Mike Johnson, who's from Louisiana, coming to New York City to call on Colombia's president to resign during a tense press conference, at times drowned out by booing. We're live in New York City and Austin tonight. Also, proof of life. Hamas releasing this video of Hersh Goldberg Poland, one of the 5 Israeli-American hostages still in captivity. Part of his left arm amputated. His parents speaking out after hearing his voice for the first time in months. What they're saying about their son as their push to get all hostages released is reinvigorated. The Supreme Court taking up a new abortion battle. Justices weighing if Idaho's near total abortion ban supersedes a federal law requiring hospitals to provide emergency care. One woman recalls her traumatic experience being told she had no options when her pregnancy put her health at risk. Plus, an Idaho doctor joins Top Story. You'll hear from him directly on the reality inside hospitals and doctors' offices across the state. Deadly flood emergency, dozens killed after weeks of flooding in East Africa. Thousands forced to flee to higher ground as weeks of heavy rains leave neighborhoods submerged. The concerns that the worst is yet to come. Plus, is Ozempic overwhelming insurance? Companies arguing they can't afford the weight loss meds, putting those who need it most in a financially compromising position. North Carolina dropping coverage for state employees after total spending on the prescription cost more than it spent on all cancer treatments last year. The fallout for patients and what it means moving forward. And 30 going on 60? Millennials giving up the hustle and bustle of city life, seeking the retirement lifestyle. The surge in those flocking to private golf communities as the older generation is not too keen on sharing the green with those youngsters. Top Story starts right now. Good evening. Tonight, the situation on college campuses across the country spiraling out of control. Tense scenes playing out as pro-Palestinian demonstrations take over more schools. We want to show you what's happening. Police in full tactical gear, right, descending on the University of Texas at Austin as officers clash with protesters. You see that video right here. State troopers called in, not only at the request of the university, but also Texas Governor Greg Abbott. And this is a live look at the campus right now. We're going to talk to our NBC affiliate reporter who is in Austin for us tonight. She's going to give us an update about what's happening there. Yesterday, we showed you the numbers of colleges with encampments and protests. That number now nearly doubling today, with more popping up from coast to coast. Today, House Speaker Mike Johnson facing a hostile environment at Columbia University as he denounced the demonstrations.
I am here today joining my colleagues and calling on President Shafiq to resign if she cannot immediately bring order to this chaos.
You heard the booing there, and at the University of Southern California, officers tackling protesters as they work to break up an encampment. The school announcing it would close campus to everyone except students concerned over safety. And it's no longer just in the United States. Protests seen on campuses in Paris and Alberta, Canada. So what can be done to restore safety on campus as colleges enter their final weeks? NBC's Stephanie Gosk starts us off tonight.
Pro-Palestinian demonstrators clashing today with riot pleas at the University of Texas in Austin. Students attempting to occupy space on campus were stopped by police and forced back. UT, the latest school caught in a wave of protests on college campuses, in solidarity with students at Columbia University who demand their school cut financial ties to Israel. In California, a rally at USC that turned tense, officials closing the gates to the campus. At Harvard, students raced to set up tents. There was a walkout today at the University of Illinois, and the encampment at the University of Michigan is growing.
The movement's never been bigger than it is right now, not only at the University of Michigan, but across the country, as we're seeing.
Columbia grad student Sueda Polat was up all night negotiating with the leadership of her school over the encampment that has now been in the center of campus for nearly a week.
Last night, the university president said you had until midnight, but you are still here. We've been in negotiations with the university and since Friday.
The school giving the students another 48 hours after they agreed to a number of conditions, including dismantling tents and stopping harassment.
It's part of our commitment to being in the space, keeping it nonviolent, free of harassment, and open to people regardless of any political belief.
As the school grapples with finding a balance between freedom of speech and student safety, a visit today from Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, who was booed by the crowd.
I am here today joining my colleagues and calling on President Shafiq to resign if she cannot immediately bring order to this chaos.
Mr. Speaker, if you were the president of Columbia University today, what would you do about this tent encampment?
I would immediately bring order to the chaos. If necessary, I would call in the NYPD. I would ask the governor to send in the National Guard.
How should people on this campus, students or faculty, protest the war in Gaza? How is it appropriate?
Have a public debate. In the free marketplace of ideas, everybody's views are welcome. You don't censor and silence and shout down, which is what's happening here, viewpoints you disagree with. That's not the respect for free speech.
Freshman Noah Kronsberg was one of a number of Jewish students who met with Speaker Johnson.
I appreciate that Congress is showing up. I think that for many Jewish students on campus, we feel unsafe, including myself.
Is it constructive to have the Speaker of the House on campus calling for the president's ouster? Absolutely not.
Debbie Becker is a Jewish professor who ate Passover dinner in the encampment with protesters.
Most of those Congress members have an agenda that is about taking down our higher education institutions that they think of as places of woke indoctrination.
Becker and other faculty in the sociology department signed a letter voicing their alarm over the NYPD's arrests on campus.
They need to vow not to be using the security forces and discipline as a way to handle conflicts over complex, challenging speech.
Stephanie Goss joins us now live from Columbia. So, Stephanie, you said they've given the encampment 48 more hours. What happens after that?
Yeah. Well, Tom, they got those 48 hours because they agreed to dismantle some tents and stop harassment. But you know what? The organizer I spoke with today said they are willing to stay as long as it takes until their demands are met. That could be weeks, she said, even through graduation. So what happens at the end of those 48 hours? We don't know. They're probably still negotiating as we speak.
You know, Stephanie, before you go, I do want to ask you, since you've been out there covering this and you've covered other protests before and movements across this country, what's your sense of the protesters? Do you think they're going to hold out? I mean, what was the sense of how much fight they have left inside of them?
Quite a bit, Tom. What I saw today at that encampment was a place that was very well organized. There was lots of food. There were lots of tents. It is not that cold out here. If they want to hold out and they continue to get that food, they will. To remove them, a lot of them they're just going to stay. And their demands, as I mentioned, are divestment from Israel. And the university might not go along with that. So it continues to be a tricky situation here. Although I will tell you that the picture that the speaker painted of a chaotic place and lots of violence is not what I have seen here. That is not what they're dealing with. But they are dealing with some determination for sure.
All right, Stephanie Goss, we always appreciate your reporting and analysis. As we reported, major clashes between pro-Palestinian protesters and police are also happening on UT Austin's campus today, leading to multiple arrests. For more on the escalating situation there, I'm joined tonight by KXA reporter Grace Reeder. Grace, thanks so much for joining Top Story tonight. I know you've been on the move with your photographer following the demonstrators there. Talk to me about what you're seeing in Austin.
Sure. This started this morning, and the protesters were in Central Campus. There's a lawn in the middle of campus here, and police pushed protesters out of that lawn. They did detain and arrest several, I would say dozens of people on that lawn area, and they have now pushed protesters to the street just west of campus. That's where we're standing now. They used horses, they used bikes, batons to push people this direction. So now people are on the street here in Austin, just outside of campus.
You know, I know Austin can be sort of a progressive enclave in the very red state of Texas at times. Explain to our viewers, have you guys ever seen anything like this? Is this normal for the campus of UT Austin, or is this one of the bigger demonstrations you've seen in a couple years?
In the last 3 years, I've been in Austin for 3 years. This is the largest protest that I have seen, but they are not uncommon for UT students historically. But this is definitely one of the most law enforcement heavy protests that I've seen. I've not seen this type of law enforcement at a protest in the 3 years that I have worked in Austin.
And then, Grace, what are the students telling you? How long will they hold out?
The students say that they are going to be out here pretty much all night. Some of the folks that did show up came out after class and were frankly more upset at the law enforcement presence. They were upset that people were being arrested on their campus. And so those folks have sort of joined the pro-Palestine force here, and they have created a fairly large group. But the folks who were here this morning, the folks that organized this protest, say that they will be here as long as it takes.
Grace Reeder, we thank you for your time. Also thank your photographer for us. We know you guys are on the move there as these protests continue in Austin. We do want to switch gears now to another big headline we're following. It's out of Gaza. Hamas releasing footage of Israeli-American hostage Hersh Goldberg Paulin, the 23-year-old, now one of more than 100 hostages still trapped in Gaza since Hamas launched its attack on October 7th. The video marking 200 days of war as growing calls for ceasefire continue. NBC's Raf Sanchez has more.
Shalom.
Tonight, this undated Hamas video giving a first glimpse of American-Israeli hostage Hersh Goldberg Paulin in captivity. The fact he survived October 7th is almost miraculous. This video shows him being kidnapped from the Supernova Music Festival, his left arm badly damaged by a grenade. Today's video shows the 23-year-old's hand is gone, but he appears otherwise uninjured. He's one of 5 Americans believed to be alive in Hamas captivity. Mom, Dad, Libby, and Orly, I love you so much and miss you so much, and I think of you every day that I'm here, he says. His parents, Rachel and John, tonight calling on Israel and Hamas to reach a ceasefire agreement.
We're relieved to see him alive, but we are also concerned about his health and well-being.
We heard your voice today for the first time in 201 days, and if you can hear us, I am telling you, we are telling you, we love you, stay strong, survive.
In the Oval Office, President Biden today also meeting for the first time with a freed U.S. hostage. 4-year-old Abigail Edan, the youngest American kidnapped by Hamas, was released last year. But Israel says 133 hostages are still in Gaza, at least 36 of them confirmed dead. And Hersh Goldberg Paulin's parents have been passionate advocates for their release.
What do you feel?
Speaking to Lester several times since October 7th.
How do you walk through a nightmare that you cannot wake up from ever?
A family in agony, but not despair.
One line that we say every single day in our house, and someone gave it to us in a sticker because we say it so much: hope is mandatory.
All right, with that, Raf Sanchez joins us tonight from Tel Aviv. Raf, every time we see those videos and then we hear from their loved ones, it is so hard to watch. What more do we know about this video, and does it give us any insight into Hamas's strategy at this point?
So, Tom, these videos are highly choreographed, they are highly calculated, and they are intended to send a message. It has been a while since we've seen one of these Hamas videos, but it is probably no coincidence that the hostage they featured in this most recent one is one of the 5 Americans being held and is probably the most high profile of those 5, given that Hersh Goldberg Paulin's parents have been so public. So on the one hand, this video is taunting. It is intended to add pressure to the Israeli government to make concessions to Hamas in order to get the hostages back. But on the other hand, it is proof of life, which is something that Israel and the U.S. have been asking for a long time. So in some ways, this could be seen as a small gesture of good faith by Hamas, not just to Israel and the United States, but also to Qatar, the mediators in this process, who have been putting a lot of pressure on Hamas to show more flexibility.
Raf, as you know, a lot of the focus for American viewers has been what's happening here at home with the protests across college campuses. And then last week, of course, what was happening between Israel and Iran. Get our viewers caught up on where hostage negotiations currently stand between Hamas and Israel.
Well, Tom, they are not in a good place. You'll remember it has been 5 months since the collapse of the last ceasefire deal, that brief deal that led to the release of several dozen hostages. Since then, there have been dozens of negotiating meetings, but no breakthrough. Israeli officials say they are pretty pessimistic at this point. They feel Hamas is drawing a very hard line in the sand. And it has been nearly a week now since there have been any meetings at all between the two sides. So not a lot of optimism, but just possible the release of this video might jumpstart the process. Tom.
Raf Sanchez for us tonight from Tel Aviv. Raf, we thank you. Now to the White House, where President Biden signed that major bill approving nearly $100 billion in aid to Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan, as well as calling into question the future of Chinese-owned company TikTok. NBC senior White House correspondent Peter Alexander has the details tonight.
Tonight, with Ukraine struggling to fend off Russia's relentless military assault, new American weapons are finally on the way after President Biden signed that nearly $100 billion foreign aid package.
It's a good day for world peace. It's going to make America safer. It's going to make the world safer.
The announcement comes after a 6-month-long White House effort to approve more aid. The delay caused by conservative Republicans who threatened to oust House Speaker Mike Johnson if he supported it. Multiple officials tell NBC News the president broke the logjam by directing aides to court Johnson, privately making clear to him the consequences of inaction. Still, the delay, officials here acknowledge, has put Ukraine at a disadvantage. The final package that the Senate passed easily overnight includes $60 billion for Ukraine, $8 billion to support allies like Taiwan, and more than $26 billion for Israel, some of it for humanitarian aid for Palestinians facing famine.
Israel must make sure all this aid reaches the Palestinians in Gaza without delay.
The president's signature also triggers a countdown clock for TikTok, giving its Chinese parent company 9 months to sell the social media platform or face a ban in the U.S. Tonight, TikTok is already vowing legal challenges.
We are confident and we will keep fighting for your rights in the courts. The facts and the Constitution are on our side.
All right, Peter Alexander joins us tonight from the White House. And Peter, there's a bit of irony in all this, right? The Biden-Harris re-elect campaign is on TikTok. Are they going to stay on TikTok?
Yeah, Tom, it's a good question. Even though the president today signed that bill declaring TikTok a national security threat, his campaign tonight tells NBC News that it plans to keep using the app at least through the election this November. A possible ban would not go into effect until early next year, and advisors at the campaign say it's a critical tool for them to reach young voters where they are. Tom?
Peter Alexander for us at the White House. Peter, thank you. We want to stay in our nation's capital now. We move to the Supreme Court, where yet another landmark abortion case is being heard. The Biden administration challenging Idaho's near total abortion ban, saying it conflicts with emergency standards for pregnant patients. The justices once again appearing divided. NBC's Laura Jarrett has this one.
Baby losses is so common. It happens to so many families, and we're just one of them.
When Jennifer Adkins learned she was pregnant and due on Halloween, she and her husband playfully nicknamed the baby Spooky. But when she went to a routine doctor's appointment at 12 weeks, her doctors said the baby likely had Turner syndrome, a rare chromosomal condition often fatal and likely to put Jennifer's own health in jeopardy.
They said, "We're surprised that you're still pregnant. Given the severity of what we're seeing on the ultrasound, most people would have miscarried by now." I was just in total shock.
When she asked about her options,
they said, "Well, because we're in Idaho, there really aren't any for you. Because your baby has a heartbeat, we can't terminate the pregnancy."
The scope of Idaho's near total abortion ban in front of the U.S. Supreme Court today. The ban went into effect after the court overturned Roe v. Wade. The state now allows abortions only when a mother's life is at risk, not her health. Doctors say that puts them in a dangerous bind.
It makes no sense that we're just going to wait until you're on death's door.
Are you worried someone's going to die? That's what I worry about the most. That's what keeps me up at night.
In court today, the Biden administration argued Idaho's law directly conflicts with a federal law that requires hospitals to provide patients in an emergency whatever treatment necessary to stabilize them. The liberal justices appearing concerned.
Her life is not imperiled, but she's going to lose her reproductive organs. And yet Idaho says
sorry, no abortion here. And the result is that these patients are now helicoptered out of state.
But Idaho's Republican Attorney General says the federal government shouldn't get to dictate state laws on abortion.
The U.S. Supreme Court needs to make it clear that when they decided on Dobbs that they meant it, that it's up to the states to decide whether they can have life-affirming legislation or not.
Having been warned her health could be at risk, Jennifer and her husband John drove 6 hours to Oregon for an abortion.
We were angry that not only did we have to go through the trauma and grief of losing a very wanted baby, but then we had to have this emotional trauma of traveling to get the procedure.
Jennifer sued the state in a different lawsuit, asking a judge to clarify the abortion ban's medical exemption. And now she's pregnant again.
It's scary. And it continues to get scarier, just knowing what the state of maternal care is in our state right now. It's like walking on eggshells.
Laura Jarrett joins us tonight from D.C., right outside the Supreme Court. Laura, I want to pick up right where you left off, that bit of positive news today. So Jennifer is pregnant again. Do we know when she's expecting?
She is, Tom. She's due this coming summer, and so far she hasn't experienced any complications. But what worries her is, what if something happens in the delivery? What if something unexpected comes up that she just can't prepare for? Given how strapped the resources are in Idaho right now, that's what worries her.
And then, Laura, I know it's hard sometimes to sort of listen to the oral argument because we have the audio, right, between the Solicitor General, between the Supreme Court justices. Do we have any idea where they stand on this case right now?
Tom, I was listening today to try to figure out the 5 votes, one way or another, how this case is going to come down. And I'm not sure that I've figured out the exact math on that. You clearly have the liberals concerned that there are people facing complications short of death, but serious complications where a bodily function could be affected. And they're worried about how this ban would affect that, where some of the conservatives seem to be saying, Tom, that the state should have an ability to criminalize abortion if they choose to do so.
And then how many states are likely to be impacted in the aftermath of this ruling if the Supreme Court rules in favor of the Biden administration?
Well, there are at least 6, Tom, that are like Idaho, that have restrictions on when exactly somebody can get an abortion, that do not go as far as the federal rule that allows you to get one if you're facing any thing that affects your bodily function, but something short of death. So there are 6 potential states that could be in play here if, in fact, the Supreme Court upholds this Idaho law, Tom.
And then the broader implications is we see more of this if the Supreme Court rules in favor of Idaho, correct?
Sure. Yeah, and if they rule in favor of Idaho, Tom, I think it's also sending a signal really to physicians across the country, right? Because the whole conflict here is, what do you do in an emergency situation where somebody comes into the ER and they might not be on the brink of death, but if you let something go on, say an infection, if you let it go on weeks or even hours, it could become more serious. And so I think that's sort of the tension you see at play here.
Laura Jarrett outside the Supreme Court for us tonight. Laura, we appreciate that. For more on the ruling and what it could mean for abortion access in Idaho and really around the country, I want to bring in Dr. Stacy Seib. He's an Idaho-based OBGYN. He specializes in maternal fetal medicine, and he's been on the front lines in Idaho for a lot of what's being discussed at the Supreme Court. Doctor, talk to us about how difficult it is for you and your colleagues to do your job every day.
Well, we've actually, I guess how I would summarize it is, we have a tool that's used very commonly to protect the health and well-being of mothers who have complicated pregnancies. It could be early rupture of the bag of water, hypertension, things like that, that is happening before a fetus is viable. And to preserve the health as well as prevent death or anything like that, it's not unusual for us to need to terminate the pregnancy. The way this whole law reads now, if there's a heartbeat at all, it's something that potentially could come under question. People could be looking at jail time, not to mention the fact that we have other laws where family members can sue. So it creates, shall we just say, a cloud over everything that we're doing at this point.
And I know your job is stressful enough, right? You have one of the most important jobs in medicine. How difficult are these conversations now, and how much of it has it taken over your practice, if you will, if that's a fair question?
So as maternal fetal docs, we are not only in the trenches and often consulted when these situations come up, but it has been a time of reassuring my general OBGYN colleagues, as well as, it even affects the hospital staff, nurses, what are the implications if we're, dealing with a pregnancy complication? Where could we possibly go wrong? And one of the things that I think all of us as medical provider is we haven't gotten true reassurance that, it's not something that we could be prosecuted for and would not be prosecuted for. And so I think we're having a little problem with trust, shall we say.
So how do you have those conversations then with your patient? I mean, I got to imagine this is nothing you've ever been trained for. I mean, you were trained in medicine. You weren't trained in the law.
No. And I'm very dependent upon my legal consultants and colleagues. And I think our in-house counsel, our out-of-house counsel, as well as, so many other organizations across the country are in total agreement with the precarious position that we're in.
Can you give me an example of you have these conversations with these women? What do they usually end up doing? Do they end up leaving the state? Do they end up breaking down? Do they look at you completely confused?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, everybody is going about living their lives, and it's not until many people are in this situation that they even realize that this could be going on. I guess most people, when you have you're pregnant and hopeful, you don't even think that maybe these things could happen to you. Like I guess the biggest thing that I think of is, breaking the bag of water early, where infection is a big enemy. And, you come in as a consultant and say, hey, I really think you're in big jeopardy here. And this is our recommended treatment. That's one thing to drop on them. And then to drop on them, and by the way, we're going to have to send you to another state where they can actually, perform what is actually pretty straightforward and simple procedure.
So, doctor, this is what I don't think enough of maybe people that are having these arguments have heard. This moment right here. So when you tell these expectant mothers who were hoping for good news, this terrible news, if you will, how are they reacting?
Oh, they're just, I don't know how to describe it other than the fact that you've taken what is probably one of the worst days in a woman's life and made it even worse. And, the family that's there, I mean, everybody's astonished. It's like, where does this come from? And why is this, I think that's the best that I can describe is astonishment.
And I know, doctor, a lot of doctors have left Idaho, right? Because this has put them in a very strange spot. You have decided to stay. Can you explain why?
If I was in a different part of my career, I might have different thoughts about this, but I feel like that this is such an important resource. And, I've been in Idaho for over 24 years. It's basically home. I raised my family here. I just feel like it's something that we have to, I have to stick around and kind of help, get things back to the norm.
No, it's your community, and you want to help those women. I totally understand it. I do want to ask you, what are you hoping happens with the Supreme Court?
I think the first thing is we need, the EMTALA enforcement that protects, providers in these urgent situations. I would also like for the Supreme Court to maybe offer some instruction to the state and the lawmakers to provide us with some clearer guidelines about what they see is actually a felony or prosecuting something that can be prosecuted, so that we understand where those lines are, because this is a big gray area. There's a lot of judgment. As you can imagine, in medicine, there are times we may only get one chance to make a decision, and we do that to the best of our ability. And if it doesn't, it could backfire on us, and I think that's what makes people very nervous around this situation.
Dr. Stacy Saibi, we thank you for your time tonight. Still ahead here in Top Story, is Ozempic overwhelming insurance? Several states and employers dropping or scaling back coverage of the weight loss drug, forcing some users to quit using it. How those providers are defending the move. Plus, say goodbye to airline vouchers, the new regulation from the White House that will force airlines to pay customers back in cash for delays and cancellations. We'll explain how all this works. And the Rolling Stones told us about wild, wild horses. Well, they were spotted in London. Royal horses soaked in blood, running loose during rush hour. We're not making this up. What authorities say spooked those animals. Stay with us. Top Story, just getting started on this Wednesday. We're back now with the booming market of weight loss drugs and the rising costs. Insurance companies in some states denying coverage for medications like Ozempic, even for those who need it most. NBC's Erin McLaughlin reports tonight from North Carolina.
All right, ma'am, we're going to come into this room.
This Duke Health Clinic changed the life of state employee Skylar Hackney. Within a year of starting the weight loss drug Wegovy, she lost 50 pounds and she's no longer pre-diabetic.
It has really helped with my energy level and how I feel on a daily basis.
But this month, a huge setback.
How are you feeling about coming off the medication?
I'm a little nervous it's going to make me sick.
When the state employee health insurance plan stopped covering the new GLP-1 drugs for weight loss, but not diabetes.
I don't expect to pay nothing, but I can't pay $1,293 for it a month. That's crazy. That's a mortgage. I'm going to have to go off of it cold turkey, and then it's going to make me become a diabetic.
North Carolina State Treasurer Dale Falwell says the state had no choice.
This drug had the potential last year of costing over $100 million. That's more than we spend, for example, on cancer treatment.
Across the state, demand for the drug surged by 730% between 2021 and 2023, quickly taking up 10% of the plan's total spending on prescription drugs. Falwell says the real problem is the price charged by manufacturers Eli Lilly and Denmark-based Novo Nordisk, averaging more than $1,000 per month.
We're under siege. Something is wrong when a drug can sell for over $1,000 in this state, and in the home country of where this company is headquartered, can sell for less than $300.
You've referred to the drug companies as a cartel.
Right.
What do you mean by that?
Cartel is defined in the Webster's Dictionary as an association which is formed to restrict competition or raise prices. I mean, that's what's happening in the prescription drug industry and the hospital drug industry.
In statements to NBC News, both companies stressed the importance of expanded coverage, with Novo Nordisk saying the state rejected multiple workable options and chose to abandon its obligation to employees living with obesity. Other employee plans, including the University of Texas and the Mayo Clinic, have already eliminated coverage or scaled it back, as well as some states. Meanwhile, providers like Leanne Owens and her patients are scrambling with the fallout.
I'm almost done with the Wegovy, the last dose of Wegovy.
What are they telling you?
That they're scared about regaining their weight. Specifically, a lot of my patients that have been able to come off blood pressure medicines, cholesterol medicines, have fears about having to restart those medicines.
Like Skylar Hackney, many will quit the drugs and see what happens.
No, I don't.
Erin McLaughlin, NBC News, Hillsborough, North Carolina.
Okay, when we come back, ancient dynamite found in a Utah home. Residents forced to evacuate as hazmat teams detonated the explosives where the homeowner told authorities that dynamite came from. And a deadly flood emergency overseas, dozens killed and thousands displaced in East Africa. why officials there fear things could only get worse. That's next. We're back now with Top Stories newsfeed, and we begin with a deadly plane crash outside of Fairbanks, Alaska. Authorities say the cargo plane caught fire before it came crashing to the ground. Both people on board were killed. Neighbors say they heard multiple explosions, smoke and debris visible for miles. The NTSB is now investigating. Hazmat crews near Salt Lake City detonating massive amounts of dynamite found inside a family home. Video capturing the massive blast triggered by what the fire chief called ancient sticks of dynamite that had been passed down through several generations. The fire department was notified about the explosives after the homeowner called a friend asking for help. The dynamite was found in the basement, garage, and shed. Nearby homes were evacuated before the detonation, but all have been allowed to return. Okay, disgraced former Congressman George Santos announcing he is ending his long shot bid to return to Congress. Santos posting a statement today saying he didn't want to split the vote with the other Republican in his district. The announcement comes after the campaign reported raising no money in March. Santos pled not guilty to a slew of federal fraud charges and is set to stand trial in September. Last year, he became just the 6th member to be expelled from the House. And Boeing, reeling from a string of safety issues, reporting a $355 million loss this quarter. Revenue for the jet maker down 8% after the near disastrous blowout of a door on one of its 737 MAX jets earlier this year. Boeing forced to temporarily ground those jets following the January incident. The company has also slowed production and delivery of those MAX jets as demand has decreased. Another big headline in the airline industry tonight, the White House announcing new regulations that require airlines to quickly refund passengers for flights that are canceled or delayed for a certain amount of time. Those airlines will also be required to disclose hidden fees or junk fees. NBC's Tom Costello has the details.
The new rules will make refunds automatic when airlines owe passengers money for flights that are significantly delayed or canceled.
It's stressful and it's a lot of money that you don't get refunded.
Right now, every airline handles refunds differently. Soon, they'll be required to issue credit card refunds within 7 days if passengers decline alternative transportation or travel credits. For domestic flights delayed more than 3 hours and not taken, 6-hour delays on international flights, refunds if a checked bag is not delivered within 12 hours, or if you pay for something you don't get, like Wi-Fi or a better seat. Cash refunds, not vouchers.
We hear again and again from passengers who describe how hard they have to push just to get the refunds that are owed to them.
The White House also targeting so-called junk fees, requiring airlines to disclose upfront baggage and reservation change fees, assure passengers that buying a ticket guarantees a seat. You don't have to pay more to select a seat, and no more advertising misleading promotional discount fares that don't include mandatory fees. The airlines say consumers are already given the choice of refundable ticket options with terms and conditions that best fit their needs at first search results. The new rules take effect in October, just before the end-of-year rush. The new rules take effect in 6 months, just in time for the Thanksgiving and end-of-the-year holidays. Tom?
Okay, Tom, we look forward to those refunds, hopefully. Now to Top Stories Global Watch and a check of what else is happening around the world. We start in London, where 5 military horses, one of them soaked in blood, ran loose on the streets. It was a wild scene. Look at this. The horses hitting vehicles and shattering windows, causing chaos near Buckingham Palace. Authorities say nearby construction spooked those horses, which are part of the household cavalry, a group that takes part in royal ceremonies. Well, 3 soldiers who were thrown from the horses were taken to the hospital. A spokesperson for the British Army could not confirm where the blood came from. Okay, the crowdfunding giant GoFundMe has now expanded its operation officially into Mexico. Mexican fundraisers can now solicit donations on the for-profit platform. The company hopes the expansion will help reach into untapped Latin American markets. Previously, U.S. users circumvented geographic restrictions by opening campaigns on behalf of relatives in Mexico for things like medical expenses and even emergency aid. And stunning scenes in Athens caused by dust blown in from the Sahara Desert. Strong winds carrying dust from North Africa Across the Mediterranean Sea, the Acropolis and other Athens landmarks, as you can see, covered in a dusty haze, giving them a Martian-like hue. The skies are predicted to clear up due to shifting winds and dropping temperatures moving in. Okay, now to the flooding disaster gripping East Africa tonight. Parts of Kenya, Burundi, and Tanzania hit with heavy rains and raging floodwaters, leaving dozens dead and sending thousands fleeing from their homes. Megan Fitzgerald has the new images and the plea for help from officials there.
Tonight, devastation in East Africa. Weeks of heavy rains triggering massive flooding across the region, leaving dozens dead and thousands displaced. In Kenya, rescue workers in life jackets wading through the streets, pulling residents to safety. Cars and trucks left abandoned in the deluge. Drone images capturing the extent of the destruction in Tanzania. Entire neighborhoods submerged. This resident saying, we're at a loss for where to begin. We lack both food to feed our children and clothes to wear. We desperately need assistance. Earlier this month, more than 50 people trapped on a bus caught in the floodwaters, pulling themselves along a wire to escape. This woman had her leg amputated after it was injured in floods back in 2019. I am lame, she says. I cannot even get out of these floodwaters after it filled my house. My house is still submerged in water. The floods disrupting the agriculture industry, critical to the region's economy.
Farmlands have been submerged. And we are also talking about high rates of wildlife animal conflict. Here we are talking about hippopotamus that are marauding within the community, scavenging for pasture because their grazing lands have been submerged.
Experts say climate change contributed to the extreme flooding.
Burundi is just another example of extreme rainfall, and some of this is due to climate change. Would they've had this flooding anyways? Likely, but climate change made it worse. And we could expect up to 4 inches of rain more in this area in the next couple of days. So with the extreme rainfall rates around the globe, the climate connection, warmer air can hold more water. And extreme rain rates, that also reduces the time for people to react to flash flooding.
The government of Burundi now calling on the international community for help.
We hope that the government will take precautions to help our people. Our people are suffering. And if you tell them to take their things and go, where are they going?
A flooding disaster that has already impacted tens of thousands, and many fear the worst is yet to come. Tom, meteorologists in Kenya say the rainfall there is expected to peak this week. And if the flooding wasn't bad enough, now there's concern that among the death and destruction, outbreaks of disease could soon set in, triggering even more deaths. Tom?
All right, Megan Fitzgerald. Megan, we thank you for that, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. We have some breaking news. A grand jury in the state of Arizona indicting 11 alleged fake electors who backed former President Trump in 2020 for efforts to overturn Joe Biden's win in the presidential election. This comes following a year-long investigation. Vaughn Hilliard has been following these breaking developments for us. Vaughn, break it down for our viewers.
Yeah, Tom, folks will recall the fact that in Georgia, Michigan, the prosecutors in those states have already indicted individuals who were alternate electors in those states. And now Arizona is the latest, coming from an indictment from the Arizona Attorney General of the 11 individuals who were Trump supporters, who folks will recall Donald Trump lost by just about 11,000 votes to Joe Biden in the state of Arizona. And you're looking at the video right now on December 14th of 2020, more than a month after Election Day, several Republicans convened in this room and they signed a certificate of a slate of electors to go and potentially be counted on January 6th of 2021. And what from this investigation is the Arizona Attorney General, Chris Mays, has indicted them for fraud, as well as a conspiracy, as well as, I'm looking at it right now here, forgery, making the case that these individuals sent this, what they're calling an alternate slate of electors, to be counted to with the intention of making Donald Trump the president of the United States, despite having lost the state of Arizona. And over the course of this investigation, there are also 7 other individuals with ties to Donald Trump. These names are currently redacted because they have yet to be served the indictment, but they include, based off of the descriptions in this indictment, the likes of Rudy Giuliani, as well as multiple attorneys to Donald Trump, including John Eastman and Boris Epstein, several individuals that are close to Donald Trump.
This will be one more legal battle that Team Trump will have to face. I do have to ask you, is the former president named in this lawsuit? Named in this indictment, I should say.
Not by name. He is named as a co-conspirator, an unindicted co-conspirator. So he is not charged, but he is named routinely as that unindicted co-conspirator number one throughout this document here, this indictment. Again, seven individuals with very close ties to him and his campaign, attorneys for his operation, are indicted, as well as those 11 individuals from the state of Arizona, Tom.
All right, Vaughn Hilliard for us tonight on that breaking news. Vaughn, we thank you for joining us tonight. We'll be right back. All right, we're back now with the millennial takeover. More and more young people moving into golf communities, searching for a quieter, more affordable lifestyle. The new trend taking over country club neighborhoods, once a spot solely for retirees. NBC Sam Brock visited one on the east coast of Florida. He has more.
On the greens and fairways of a country club community near you. It might not be just boomers and retirees you see walking the links these days, but more and more millennials in their late 20s to early 40s and seeking that same lifestyle.
I would say a lot are just getting into golf and kind of wanting that family atmosphere with golf.
What were the criteria that you were looking at?
I think it's the package, right?
Victoria Meadows Murphy and her husband Evan are 35 and standing on a lot of land that will soon feature their new home at the Tequesta Country Club, more than 2 hours away from Miami.
For us to have the calm and the quiet, and also there's, we have our community, we have good restaurants now.
No one has been like, those darn kids, they're taking our retirement homes away from us.
No, not at all.
While Evan is from Tequesta and purchased their current home in 2018, Victoria, who owns her own interior design company, started noticing something about business in the neighborhood.
I think the light bulb went off when most of my clients that were reaching out were our age and younger.
According to reporting from the Wall Street Journal, life on the green surged during the pandemic and continues to grow. While in 2023, more golf rounds were played than any other year on record. But golf appears to be just one piece of the millennial puzzle.
I think the key question is, why not? Why would they not move to these golf communities? Most of them are gated, so you have the great security, on-site dining, tennis courts, swimming pools, of course, golf courses.
Are you seeing pushback in any of these communities from the older residents?
Communities are adapting while others aren't. There are communities renovating their club rooms to make it more trendy, like adding a pickleball court or two.
As the trend takes off from the suburbs of Texas and Arizona to Southern California, not everyone's wild about sharing the space, like Doug and Jamie Baker in the Coachella Valley.
I like not having trick-or-treaters every October. That's just me.
We don't want Coachella here all year long.
But the research indicates the millennial move likely isn't going anywhere. A recent Harvard study showed the number of millennials moving to peripheral suburbs jumped 30% in 10 years. And for young, aspiring couples like the Murphys, the pivot is perfect.
I think the next step with our future is this home and building it for our family and building it to work for our family in the future.
All right, with that, Sam Brock joins us tonight from Miami. So, Sam, you mentioned we've been seeing this ongoing trend for more than a decade now. Can we expect to see more and more young people move into these sort of suburban outskirts?
It sounds almost satirical a little bit, but the reality, Tom, is yes, if anything, this trend is going to be amplified. And there's one very easy explanation for that. Work from home. The idea that so many people now maybe have to go to their offices once or twice a week, if that, and the fact that you have the technology and the social acceptability of doing your work from, a remote location. Why wouldn't you live in a setting where you had all of these things at your fingertips, and the safety can't be overstated for families that have been living in cities where perhaps crime or any other sort of issues had been a problem for them? This takes care of all of that, and they can do it while still keeping up their job. The expectation, this will continue in full force.
So Sam, I'm sure for someone like you, Boca Vista maybe sounds like amazing. You can work on your backhand, you can work on your doubles game. How does it compare, right, to living in a place like that, to living in a big city, cost-wise? Like we're talking about Los Angeles or Miami. Do you end up saving money?
Sure. And by the way, you forgot pickleball. Pickleball, very important in that
Yeah.
equation. Yeah, so the reality is you're getting better value for the property. It's not as expensive per square foot as what you would see in New York City or Miami or Los Angeles. But you have to remember, Tom, if you want to buy into these communities, there is actually buy-in fees that range anywhere from $15,000 to, in some cases, $250,000, HOA fees, country club fees. So it does all start to add up. This trend is for wealthier millennials, not just all millennials. That said, it does end up being a better bargain for everything that you're getting, these families say, than it would be if they were still living in the big cities.
Yeah, you got to make sure you spend money on those shuffleboard parks as well. Sam Brock for us tonight. Sam, we thank you for that one. That was a lot of fun. We thank you for watching Top Story. I'm Tom Llamas in New York. Stay right there. More news on the way.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.